Hello and welcome to another edition of the Homewrecker Podcast. I am the Golden Greek, Alex Arion, joined as always by my beautiful, lovely, gorgeous, amazing trophy wife, Monique.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Great.
How are you?
Fantastic as always.
Excellent.
As always.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this week we are going to talk about giants. Like giants. Like real giants.
Not they might be giants.
No.
Not the New York Giants.
Not Andre the Giant.
No.
Although he was awesome.
Yes, he was.
He definitely was awesome. But keeping with the theme of large beings, since we recently talked about Bigfoot again, we decided we're going to talk about giants. Did they exist? Some people say that it's just mythology, just made up stories.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is evidence out there that they did actually, really, truly, at one time, walk the earth. And there are some people who actually believe they still are out there. Maybe living in the mountains.
Mm-hmm. They're in hiding.
Underground somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We're going to talk about it, though.
Yes.
So, we watched a couple of phenomenal... My microphone is getting away from me here.
Oh, no.
I don't know what just happened. That was very strange. I'm going to leave that in. I'm not editing that. Go to talk, and my microphone's just pulling away from me. Like, okay.
It's like listening to you.
Yeah. What was I saying? Okay, yes.
So we watched this excellent documentary.
We watched some documentaries, yes. There's 3 of them. It's a series.
Yes.
True Legends.
Mm-hmm. There's Technology of the Fallen was the first disc.
Yes.
Then there was The Unholy Sea.
Yes.
And that was the second one. They all kind of blend together. And then
it's a documentary series.
Yeah. And then the third was Holocaust of the Giants.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes. So those 3 documentaries, phenomenal. Great. Put up by Gen 6 Productions,
yes.
Which I believe is Steve Quayle and Timothy Alberino.
They were the ones who did this documentary. Gen 6, when I looked them up online, there's like a whole bunch of people who contributed.
Oh, okay.
I think, but actually, Timothy Alberino wasn't listed in the group of people. But so I don't know if this was like a separate thing he did with them.
Well, I know he wrote and directed all 3 of them.
Yeah, but I don't know if he typically works with that production company, is what I'm saying. But okay, he did for this, yeah.
So, just really, really fascinating films, and they make the case for giants having once walked the earth, and they talk to a lot of different people around the world, various experts, religious leaders, village folk who were living in some... I guess we should probably explain. There are megaliths. There are various structures around the earth, all over the earth, not just in South America where one of the films took place. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, all of the films take place everywhere.
Peru,
so I shouldn't
Bolivia,
say that. Yeah.
Like all over. A lot of South America.
So there are these megalithic structures that are all over the world, and some of them have been covered up by governments or whoever,
churches.
Who knows. And there are some that are still standing. There's a couple of structures in Greece. There's some in, you mentioned Chile, Bolivia, Peru. And you see these structures. They're not like full-on buildings, but a lot of walls and stones that are stacked on top of each other. And
they're enormous.
They're gigantic, and there are engineers. Modern day engineers, people that build skyscrapers and all kinds of structures that have no idea how these were built.
Well, it's not just because it's such big stone. The stone, the way they go against each other, there's no cement or anything in between. There's no
mortar, there's no cement, nothing.
Yeah.
They're just evenly, perfectly symmetrically stacked. They all fit together perfectly. So there was some type of technology that was used all these years in the past that obviously we don't know about.
And also, a lot of the stones had like these weird, perfectly circular drill holes. Yeah. And they had like cutout sort of, so it was either an opening in the structure or it wasn't like there was an opening to the other side, but the way it was cut, like shapes, rectangles or squares or whatever, and like layered throughout like a design. And and people try to say, oh well, it was the Incas and they did it with copper tools and things like that, but
no.
I
don't know. No, you could. I mean, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. Obviously, I don't. I just know what I saw on this documentary. But there's no. Yeah, no. There's no way. Like, same thing with the pyramids. They still don't. You're telling me that these huge structures were built by people, multiple people pulling with ropes and pulleys? No.
Well, another thing they mentioned,
just the way everything fit together, the fact there's no mortar used in between the stones, everything, there's no way.
They also brought up, though, you can tell the difference from these stones versus what the Incas did. Like, you could tell the difference. There were smaller stones, they weren't stacked as well.
Well, they showed...
It's like they tried to replicate that,
yeah,
but
I mean, they showed...
there's a difference.
They showed...
Yeah.
Where the Incas actually tried to build on top of these structures.
Mm-hmm.
So you could tell where these ended and the Incas' construction began, because they're just small rocks that they were using, because that's all they could lift and that's all they knew how to work with. They couldn't work these enormous... I mean, these things weighed hundreds of tons. Some of these stones that they were...
Hundreds of tons.
I mean, think about that. What crane do you know that can pick up hundreds of tons?
Yeah.
So... and they went through a bunch of different theories of how they thought perhaps the technology worked, and we don't have to get into all that stuff, but I definitely recommend watching these documentaries. They're really, really fascinating, really well done, really good production value on them too. So
there are different theories. So back to giants, how did they get here?
Well, the thing being, who made these structures? Was it people like us that just had technology, or was it giants? And they kept calling these structures cyclopean.
Mm-hmm. Cyclopic.
Cyclopean.
Cyclopic structures.
Yes. Yeah. And that would be Cyclops. The Cyclops of Greek mythology fame, the giant who was a very skilled craftsman. And apparently, as legend has it, all of these cyclopean giants were master masons and were phenomenal with their stonework and all that, and craftsmanship. So that's one of the theories, is that it was these enormous beings that used to roam the earth were building these structures, and they're still standing now, thousands of years later. This is now, they would have been around pre-flood, and I say pre-flood meaning the famous Noah's Ark, 40 days, 40 nights of rain. The story that's in literally every religion has a great flood story. So, did it happen? I don't know. I wasn't there, but every religion around the world has a great flood story or some variation of it. So, something happened at some point.
So, if it were giants, how did they get here? And there's a few different theories. There's the theory that fallen angels bred with humans, and that created the giants. It's also thought that these fallen angels bred with other animals and created a lot of the mythological beasts that you hear about in stories. And there's a thought that there was just all these incredible beasts and they terrorized people, and then you had these giants, and God decided that he didn't want any more of this, so that's what caused the flood. But then there's another theory. Oh, were you going to say something?
I was going to mention the flood. Why God had the flood come through is because these fallen angels were essentially turning the earth into their... Well, how can I say this nicely? They basically were fucking everything up. They were breeding with humans. They were breeding with animals. They were making animals and humans breed together. They were a lot of debauchery, I guess, a lot of deviance. And it was their deviant behavior that according to legend, God was witnessing and said enough of this, and he brought the flood and he wiped out everything.
He got sick of their shit.
Essentially.
Right. But there's another interesting theory to it that it was aliens that came, and a lot of them refer to these aliens as the Anunnaki. And these aliens, they were large, they were very intelligent, they had vast technology. They were the ones who taught everyone about the technology, like how to do the things that they learned how to do. And there's some theories that they bred with humans, and that's what created the giants. But then there's another theory that the Anunnaki, they had people, when they came to Earth, they had their own people. I don't know if I'm going to say it right, the Igigi, it's Igigi, and that the Igigi would mine all the gold at the Earth. But after so long, they revolted, they got sick of it, and they were like, we're done. And they threw their tools down and said to their leader, like, that's it. So the Anunnaki decided, well, let's make a new slave race. So they took their DNA and mixed it with Homo sapien DNA, and they made humans to mine the gold for them. So there are these theories that aliens came and did something to get with humans or to create humans, which is how we came about today, but also how giants came about as well.
Yes. Giants would have been the offspring of these fallen angels or aliens and human females, is how legend has it.
Hopefully those babies didn't come out like giants, because that would probably suck.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I was thinking about. Like, so did they come out like normal babies and just grow? Otherwise, ouch.
And it seemed like all of the giants were male, too. You notice that?
Well, there's different stories. There were some... It was weird because, like, one of the things they mentioned about a female giant, they were saying it was regarding Solomon, and it wasn't actually a female, but it was regarding a male giant, but they changed it to a female. You did hear mostly about male giants.
Well, because they said that the giants used to terrorize the...
In one area, there was one story specifically.
Where, yes, that the giants would terrorize the local human tribes because they would come and take the women, because they would try to mate with the women, because I guess they didn't have women, and when they realized they couldn't mate with the women because they were too big.
But that wasn't the story everywhere. They came in on, was it in Peru? The island made of reeds. It was...
I'm just giving a story.
Oh, I know, but
yeah,
I just don't want people to think this was everywhere.
I'm talking about one story.
Okay.
That, I'm not saying this happened everywhere, but this was one story, and I've lost my train.
They tried breeding mating with human females, and that didn't work. They would kill them, and
then they started basically fucking each other.
Yeah.
They would sit there and in front of the villagers just go at it with each other. These huge giants would just like drop trow and go at each other in front of everybody.
Yeah, and then the story with that was God...
that was part of the deviance.
Yeah.
That he had enough
God was upset, and for that particular story, an angel came down and had his rod, his sword, and he pointed at them, and then like lightning came and struck them, and they all burned.
They all burst into flames.
Yep, and they burned because God was angry. Now these are just stories, and it's interesting though because people have allegedly found skeletons.
Well, that was going to say, these are stories, but they're backed up with evidence in some cases because there are skeletons. Now, when I say that these stories are backed up with evidence, I don't mean evidence of that's exactly what happened, this is what caused it. What I'm saying, evidence that the giants actually did exist because there are skeletons that have been found. Now, we know that, according to the documentary, a lot of these bones and remains have been confiscated by... What's the big one? Should we even say it? Because we'll probably get...
The Catholic Church.
Yeah. The Vatican apparently has agents everywhere they have the largest intelligence agency in the world, which I was not aware of. But upon further research, after hearing this, because that's what you do, you don't just take something you hear and accept it as fact, you get to look into some things. It's actually true. They do have the largest intelligence organization in the world. Bigger than the CIA and all these other agencies around the world. The Vatican's the biggest. Crazy how that works. So they've got agents everywhere. So essentially, anytime any remains or any kind of anything of historical significance is found, the Vatican knows about it and confiscates evidence or covers up evidence of history.
There was an archaeologist who wrote that they found these bones of giants and they move everything into the church, everything they found, all their artifacts. They had regular-sized human skeletons and then these skeletons of giants, and they moved it in the church, and then the next day it was gone. Somebody was coming, taking them. I wonder who it could have been.
Yeah, and it was that was a story from the late 16th century that was being retold in the documentary, and they were telling, they would find these remains and bring them into the church and then gone the next day.
Remains of giants, the skulls, because some would be like, oh, how do you know it's not a mammoth or something? You find these big bones, but they had the skulls. And a lot of the shells were oddly shaped. The skulls had an elongated head.
You said shells.
Oh.
That's why I said skulls.
Oh, I didn't mean to say that. But they had an elongated head.
Yeah, some of them did. Some were just normal,
big.
but just shaped like a normal skull, but they were just huge. I think they said that they would take their swords and stick them in the mouth, and it would go all the way to the
eye socket.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The eye socket.
And the sword would go all the way up to the handle.
Yeah.
And they showed a sword from that era, and
it's like 4 feet. 4 feet long.
Yeah, it was long. It was big.
That's what she said.
You got me with that one. Well done. So anyhow, yes. So these were big. Whatever they were big. Enormous.
And they were talking about like the teeth. How heavy the teeth were. They were huge. And they were saying it was like 3 fingers wide by 4 fingers long, and they would be like 10 ounces. Just one tooth, which is crazy.
One tooth, 10-ounce tooth.
And it's interesting because some of these giants were allegedly 20 to 30 feet tall.
Yeah.
And then there were other stories of these giants that were maybe 10 to 15 feet tall, but they were so dense. They were very heavy and they were very large. So it's not like they were just tall and skinny. They were just massive.
One of the things that really got me was, and it was at the beginning of the second documentary, the Unholy See, the story of they had a gentleman who was on who had his face blacked out, and I don't know if the voice was disguised or not, but he was in the military. He's a veteran, and he was saying that back, I want to say it was in 2003 or 4. It was recently, within the last 20 years. He was overseas in Afghanistan. And he was a pilot, helicopter pilot, and they had gone into an area and were told, essentially, this is like a top secret kind of thing, you're just a transport. And what was put onto his...
It was a plane.
It was a plane, I'm sorry, you're right, it was not a helicopter pilot, he was a pilot, excuse me. Thank you. What was put onto his plane, onto his transport, was a pallet that had a large man on it. And when he said large man, it was a large man in the fetal position, and they estimated he would have been about 12 feet tall.
Yeah, 10 to 12 feet tall.
10 to 12 feet tall. He was in the fetal position, and they didn't have pictures, but they had drawings, like an artist's rendition of what would have been there. And the way it was depicted was like he's in the fetal position, but his legs and his feet were still way off the side of the pallet.
Yeah, it was kind of like the bottoms of his legs and his ankles and feet were hanging off the pallet.
Yeah. And these were not normal size pallets you see in a store. So these are enormous pallets. And the pilot said that the special forces or whatever
they were like
unit
caretakers
of the military, of this
thing.
cargo.
Yeah, this cargo.
We'll call it cargo. And they said that they had gone up into the mountains, and this thing had attacked and taken out one troop.
Mm-hmm.
Right, one special unit got taken out by this thing, and a second special unit was sent out, and they were the ones that actually killed him. But the locals were telling them stories about how they basically worshipped this guy.
They would give sacrifices.
They would make sacrifices to this giant. I mean, that's really what it was. It was a giant.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of weird that maybe they're still out there.
And it's interesting because
if you believe this story.
Something that came up, I think it was on the Unholy See disc, they were talking about how there are groups in the military who go into tunnels and caves and they hunt these creatures, these giants and all these other, kind of what we talked about before, these mythical
things that go up in the night.
Yeah, the things that we just say, oh, that's a myth, it doesn't exist, but they do. And then I was like, what came to mind? And I asked Alex, I was like, well, the first thing that came to mind, and he said it before I could even finish my sentence.
Hellier. Tear your wrist.
Tear your wrist.
Hellier. Yeah.
Yep, he was the one who would go down in the holes and tunnels.
He said that was his job in the special forces. He would go into the tunnels, and he would flush out these creatures.
Mm-hmm.
He would flush them out and they'd kill them.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty insane, but... Again, I mean, we've said it before, the Earth is so big, there's so much undiscovered territory that, I don't know.
It's just, and people are saying they can be in the mountains, they can be in the tunnels.
Underground,
yes. Yeah. And what was it? I forget the town. Was it in Peru? There was this, I'm forgetting the name of it, this underground cavernous tunnel system.
Yeah, I believe that was Peru.
A group of children and their teachers got lost in it.
No, that wasn't. That was in...
it
was not. It was in the Mediterranean.
Oh, okay.
The island of the Mediterranean. What was the island? Why can't I... Sardinia. Jeez.
Oh, thank you.
That was in Sardinia.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, this group, there's like these tunnels, and I guess you can easily get lost. And they go from like one section to the other, and...
They're miles long.
And it's
alleged
that there are giants living in there.
There are giants still there, yes.
People worry, like, did they just get lost? Or did something else happen to them?
And they've sealed parts of these tunnels off.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of stories. And I mean, again, who knows? Who knows?
It just makes me think, if there are giants that are anywhere from 12 to 15 to 30 feet tall, living on this earth in the mountains and underground, and nobody really knows about it, then
people know about it.
But why couldn't there be Bigfoot? Sasquatch?
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. Come on.
To me, it almost makes it make more sense. Like, because if there can be this, then there absolutely can be these other things.
It's interesting too. With giants, right? You see that they've always been around in some form in pop culture, in our stories and movies and things like that. I mean, geez, that recent movie, Cabin in the Woods. What was the end of that movie?
A giant. Well, that was a god.
But it was a giant. It was essentially a giant that was coming up out of the earth.
Yeah.
What's the story they tell in the
that they're gonna come up
that they're gonna come up from the earth?
Yeah.
That's one of the myths. These giants will once again rise and come out from the earth and take over the world again. Essentially, the way it was described was the story goes full circle, basically, where we started in one place, they got decadent, that all these things happened, these perversions and whatnot, and then God came and wiped everything out, and we started over again. We're kind of now coming full circle, where the giants will once again come and rise again and torment humanity, and essentially the cycle is continuing. It's starting over again, allegedly, according to the story.
Well, just talking about pop culture movies, you think about Prometheus. If anyone's watched that, the aliens that kind of started it all, if you will, and how it's similar to what is talked about. One of the theories about fallen angels coming to Earth, breeding with humans, I was doing some reading about theories on that, and one thing that I read that was interesting was that, I think they said it was in the book of Genesis, that while God referred to his angels as his sons, they were not given the capability to breed. They could not reproduce. So if fallen angels, did something change when they became fallen? I don't know. But it was just another good thing to think about, like when you hear all these different theories. Nobody really knows.
Right. And that's I gotta tell you, I don't know if you have or not. I have never read the Bible. Still never read the Bible. Obviously, I've heard passages from it, going to church growing up and things like that. But I've never actually sat and read the Bible. And in years past, I've thought about sitting and reading it just to say I did. I mean, there's a Bible in every hotel room, for crying out loud. But I've never actually sat and read through the Bible. I have heard that all the different versions of the Bible through the years have become less and less like what the original text was. If I could get my hands on an original text, I'd love to see that before it was all... Yeah, obviously. But before it was all changed around and annotated and, made modernized and things. I'd rather see the original before it was taken and interpreted by multiple people. But yeah, it's very, the whole thing with the giants and the stories and everything, it's just very...
I mean, think about giants are spoken of in the Bible.
That's what I'm saying, like the story of David and Goliath. That was the Bible, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so you have these stories, they've been around for as long as we've been around, because apparently the giants have been around since we've been around. And yeah, it's just very fascinating. But the question is, though, and I don't know if it was answered in these documentaries at all. I mean, they hypothesized about a lot of things, but why do you think something like the Catholic Church, for example, or local municipalities that have these landmarks or that have found these bones, why would they want to cover it up? Why would they not want people to know about it and speak about it or explore it?
So I don't want to offend anyone in their religion, but if you look at the history of the Catholic Church, what do? They go find people who have other religions, they stomp on it, they build their temples on the worshiping grounds of these other cultures. And I was telling Alex the other day when we were talking about this, it's for two reasons. One, as an FU, I think, now it's, our God you're going to worship in this spot. But two, I think that they want to take hold of whatever portal is there, whatever magic is there, like they pick their spot to worship for a reason. And I think the church wants to take a hold of that, because if it is true for any reason, they want to capitalize on it. And they want that power. It's all about control. They want to control what people know and when they know it.
It's very interesting to me, too, knowing what I know of religion and growing up. Wasn't super religious, but we went to Sunday school and things like that. And I'm Greek Orthodox, but that's very, very similar to the Catholic religion in the way that it's practiced and things like that. Except our priests were allowed to marry women and have children, so that was different. But anyway, for the most part, the ceremonies and things like that, the beliefs were all essentially the same for the most part. I'm not going to get into the differences, but it's just to me. It makes me wonder and question everything, because you're raised knowing a certain thing and brought up to believe a certain thing. And obviously when you're young, you're impressionable, so you don't know what's real and what's not. You know what your parents tell you and what people in positions of influence tell you, that your parents tell you to trust and listen to. It's interesting to me that, knowing what I know about religion and everything, how just in my lifetime, never mind hundreds of years, but just in my lifetime, how religion has gone from having a straight right and wrong. There's a right and wrong, and then you have, like, for example, currently the Pope. This guy's pro-gay. He's pro-transgender. He's pro all these things that were never a part of the religion when I was younger. And that was in the last 25, 30 years, that all of a sudden these things just changed.
Well, the church has actually done that over time. They've changed their stances on things because I think they're at the point where they can't force their religion on people anymore, so now they have to start changing and say, yeah, we're open to this, we're open to that. So where we once condemned you and beat you to death for doing this or feeling this way or thinking this way, we're now going to accept you because we want you to be one of us. It's a numbers game.
I guess so. Like I said, it makes me question. I've always, that's been my nature, I always question everything anyhow, but this even more so makes me go, this religion thing, I guess, I mean, I don't know what I believe anymore, because it's obviously, none of it is being done from my vantage point, from a place of good, a place of goodwill, a place of good intent for the followers. It's a very self-serving thing. It's very much in my view, it's destructive, because we're now being told by this person who is the head of religion in the Catholic faith, and I mean, I think that's the most prominent religion in the world for the most part, right? I think, as far as Christianity goes.
Yeah, Christianity, yeah.
And now it's all changed. And like I said, it
but
was
not
a quick
just that.
change.
What else is coming? Being open to aliens. They've come out and
Yes.
said, oh, well, if aliens did come to Earth, if they were real, would we baptize them? Things of that nature. They keep changing their stance on things to be more open, because in case something happens, they can't be proven wrong.
I guess. I mean,
right?
This is your
This is
view.
my
This
view
is your
of
opinion,
it,
because
yeah.
I don't know. This is not my opinion.
This is how I look at it.
Just make
'cause
sure you're saying that it's your view. It's not like what we saw.
No, this is just me, Moni, my
okay.
my
I mean,
thoughts.
And I'm not saying you're wrong. Nobody really knows.
But
I find it funny too. Sorry, let me just get this point out. One of the largest telescope in the world that is fixed on the sky, looking out into what is known to us as outer space, is owned by the Vatican.
And guess its name.
Its name, Lucifer. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Huh? Okay, so that right there, when I found that out, I'm like, you fucking kidding me? Like, so what are what do these people actually worship? Are they worshiping God, or is it something more sinister?
And with that, as a bigger FU, like, if you're supposed to love all man, that was like Apache ground where they had like worship.
Where they put this
it was holy
yeah.
Apache ground that they put it there, and they didn't care. It was like, nope, FU.
Yeah,
and what are they
Apache
watching?
off of,
yeah,
they pushed them out of their ground, their sacred ground.
Because that's what you do when you love and respect all men. You know.
Yeah, it's. I mean, again, and we don't mean. I'm not trying to crap on anyone's beliefs or anything like that. Absolutely not. I'm just telling you what we've found, and this is stuff that was in these documentaries, but stuff that's very easily verifiable as well. You can look for yourself and find this stuff out. It's just very, very interesting to me, and it makes me call literally every single thing I've ever heard or believed coming from that source, even though I wasn't Catholic, but coming from a religious source, makes me question everything. Was it all just made up? Every single thing? I mean, we're told that the stories in the Bible, for example, are parables. They're not meant to be taken literally. But, I mean, what are we... I guess my thing is, do we think that the Vatican knows the real, true history of the Earth, and that's why they cover everything up, because they want their narrative out there? They know what really happened, and they're covering up for whatever sinister purpose, because anytime you're keeping something from people, it's not for their own good. there is a sinister purpose behind it. Because why else would you need to be secretive about it? That's my thing.
I want to bring up a couple of points.
We're going all over the place.
I know.
I hope we're not confusing
I don't want to forget.
We probably are.
I want to talk about the Smithsonian in the Vatican, but before we do that, just talking about that telescope in Arizona, it was, in the documentary they mentioned, they kind of hinted that, they're watching a planet. Now, with the Anunnaki, that is, if you read certain things, it's correlated with Planet X. And how it comes around every so often, and it's been, I guess there are different theories on when it's supposed to kind of get into our solar system, because its orbit is so large. It's something like 3,600 years, I think. But then it was Zachariah
Sitchin.
Yeah, Zachariah Sitchin made a comment about it's possible it could be more like 7,500 years, I believe. But it's difficult to say. But I was reading a couple different articles about it, and I'm like, okay, so you have the Anunnaki, you have Planet X, you have all this stuff, and it kind of makes sense. And again, with conspiracy theories, it can make sense, but you can't really prove it, and you can't quite disprove it either. So who's to say? I just thought it was interesting how all these things tied together.
Yeah, and we know that there is a vast library, records, warehouse, I guess, whatever you want to call it, that is located beneath the Vatican. That's, I say we know, like I've been there or something. No, but it's, a lot of people have come out and said that they have records and they have artifacts and they keep these things
well,
down
according
there.
to the documentary, it's not, there's a record section, if you will.
Yeah.
But then there's an artifact section.
Right. So they theorize that that's where, I mean, the bones of giants, for example, would be kept. It's any kind of, maybe the Holy Grail, if there ever actually was such a thing. Maybe that's there, like we see in Indiana Jones. They have like the warehouse with all the stuff and all these various things. That's the Vatican's basement, essentially.
Think about like that Warehouse 13, like all those shows or movies that reference that. Well, where is it coming from? Some say it's Area 51. Is it Vatican's basement? The Smithsonian. It was also brought up that the Smithsonian wanted to hide the fact that giants were present on this earth, and any remains found, they would confiscate them as well. Right.
Yeah, because it would mess with their theory of evolution, their Darwinian theory of evolution, which is a theory. It's in the name, theory.
Just like gravity is a theory.
Just like germs are a theory.
Germ theory.
Did you know that? Yeah. So all this stuff that's going on right now is all based off of a theory.
Technically, it's a theory.
It's a theory. Germ theory is a theory. Anyway, try to get back to check here. Sorry, back to the Giants. Another aspect, and again, I apologize for anybody that's listening. Go, what the hell is wrong with them? They're going all over the place. What do they have about this, and that? There's a lot of information in these, and we try to keep every episode. I mean, we don't have a time limit, but we try to keep these relatively digestible, I guess. One of the things that they talked about that I loved, and I absolutely, completely believe this is true, the Stargates.
Oh, yeah.
The Stargates. These giants or beings would come through these portals, and that's what a lot of these megalithic structures were Stargates. Now, we know, we don't know, but there's a theory that the whole Iraq war that was started back after 9/11 was for us to get into Iraq because there was a Stargate there. That's a huge conspiracy theory.
One thing I just want to jump in and mention, though, is because where these cyclopean structures, these megalithic structures were, also has to do with astronomy and where they were placed, which makes sense for Stargates. Yes.
So the Stargates that they talked about, and they actually visited one and camped out outside of one for the filming of this documentary. just really fascinating. And I guess they said that they can open with either vibrational sounds, so some forms of music. A lot of the local townsfolk believe can open up the Stargate, and it could just be random times, maybe in the Earth, if it rotates, whatever. If it's whatever, we don't know. It's all theoretical because nobody's actually. Go ahead.
No, because everything vibrates though. The Earth has its own vibration. So when you said how just the Earth moving, maybe it's something with where the Earth is at that certain time could cause a vibration to open it as well.
Yeah, it could be. And they don't know. They camped out there to try to see if they would see anything because the local townspeople and this was in South America, and was this in Argentina or was this in Chile? I apologize. I can't remember which country this was in, but it was in South America, and they had a lot of the local townsfolk come and tell stories and share stories and legends and things like that. And they told a story of a shaman that they had, and I guess this was recently, or at least in relation to when the documentary
and
was filmed.
And was it 2006, he said? 2006,
thank you, yes. So in 2006, this shaman went to the Stargate, and people witnessed him doing a ritual and walking into the Stargate. Now, the Stargate, when you look at it, it's just one of these megalithic structures, big wall with the big stones, and it has an opening carved into the stone, but it's still solid stone. If you touch it, it's rock.
And there's like a little notch too.
Right, yes, thank you. But you're not walking through it. They can't open it. There's nothing to open. There's nothing there. It's solid. Well, this shaman, did a ritual, and they said that the opening kind of turned almost like liquid. It looked like it was like a liquid type of consistency, I guess, and he was able to walk through the Stargate, and he was behind it or in it, wherever he went, we don't know, but he was there for 6 hours. And then he came out, and he was naked when he came out. He said, this shaman told the locals that he had 2 guides that guided him while he was on the other side, and that he gained vast knowledge from being on the other side. Just a crazy story, but these local people, I mean, they don't swear by it.
And there's also these stories with Native Americans where they have sacred land because there's certain points on the earth where if they do a specific ceremony a certain way, everything has to be just right, they can open these stargates. And it said that is how they would communicate with this other side, and they would get information.
Yes, they got, one of the tribes was communicating through the other side, and they were getting information back, and this would have been in 2001. They were told to stay out of New York City because there's going to be a big catastrophe, and they described planes going into the buildings. They described the entire 9/11 scenario going down, and they came back with this information and told all of their tribes people, stay out of New York for the next, because they weren't given an exact date, but they were told that this catastrophe would be happening. They told everybody, stay out of New York City, because this is coming, this is going to happen. And then it happened. And of course they were all scared because they didn't want to come out and tell anybody we got this information. But now, obviously, so much time has passed, they were able to share the story. But
there were so many incredible stories.
Yeah, just really, really interesting stuff. Now, the other part about the Stargate that I want to touch on, too, while the crew was sitting there filming, they didn't have anything supernatural, I guess you could say, happen. But they got pelted with hail. And they had this big storm come over right where they were camping out, essentially, and the neighboring town, just a really small village. And the next day, they had to have the townspeople come and help them get their van out of the mud and push their van out of the mud because they got stuck. And after the fact, they looked, and the meteorology in the area, their little tiny area, the epicenter of the storm was right over their tent, essentially, because they camped out literally maybe 20 feet from where the opening of the Stargate was. The key would open his tent up at night, and he'd shine his flashlight, and there's the door of the Stargate.
Yeah.
Just fascinating. So they're saying, why did we have this storm hit just right there and just hit this village right here? But nowhere else in the surrounding area had any kind of weird weather. Just really bizarre stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I always look at it like, okay, the universe is saying something, it's trying to communicate, but that's again my opinion.
Just very fascinating, incredible stuff that, I mean, some people listening is like, so there was a storm, big deal. But it's just very interesting and coincidental.
Yeah.
If you believe in coincidences, that it would happen that night and just over that area where there were people waiting for something to happen with cameras trying to document something. Just very bizarre. Mm. So, the big takeaway, I guess, is that the Vatican, the Catholic Church, is not who they say they are. And don't trust anything that comes out of there, I guess. I mean, that was like the takeaway I got from all these movies, because, and I mean, again, everybody has an agenda. Everybody does. I don't care who you are, you have an agenda, whether you know it or not. You have some kind of agenda. Us by talking are fulfilling somebody's agenda that we may not know. Everybody's got an agenda. So the people that made this film obviously are very religious. You can tell just by the things they were talking about, and that's fine. Again, I don't want to poo-poo anybody's beliefs or anything, but everybody's got an agenda. So what is the Vatican's agenda? We can just, I mean, like I said, I think because they're so secretive and they try to cover up all these things, I think it's a sinister agenda, and I don't believe anything that comes out of there or that comes out of anybody, any kind of a religious leader. And again, a lot of religions they're good if they're practiced to keep people good, but when they start getting erratic and start saying, just do whatever you want, just blah, 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 that's not order, that's chaos. And when that's being promoted, there's got to be a reason for it, in my view. And I think, did you know that, and this may be related, may not be, but did you know that UFO sightings in the last 2-3 months especially have just shot up?
That was something else with those structures, the megalithic structures.
Yeah.
A lot of UFO activity, lights, things like that. Mm-hmm.
So what's that about? Now, we're told, watching this documentary, they tell you, don't believe what's coming because it is part of a great deception, which is essentially having a one world religion, a one world government. Mm-hmm. It's all control. Basically, the people at the top want to control everybody else. That's how it's always been. But this is on a grand scale, so they are saying that when the ships come down or whatever happens, they think that the reason why the church has come out now and said, would we baptize the others, why they're having these conversations and having these discussions now, is because we're getting closer to the time where fallen angels, the Anunnaki, whoever it is actually returning to Earth. But we are being warned on this documentary series not to believe everything that comes out of the church, because this is part of their great plan and deception to bring about this one world government, this one world religion, and essentially control all of humanity. Mm-hmm. So to be very cautious about what you believe and what you see. And I mean, I've always said that. If there's an alien invasion, I'm not going to believe it unless I'm standing right there and a freaking alien comes down and is sitting right in front of me and I can touch it and talk to it and interact with it. If I see it on my TV, I don't believe it. I don't believe anything I see on TV as it is anyway. But that's pretty much what is being... That's what the big theory is. That's the plan. And if you've ever heard of Project Bluebeam, allegedly the government has that technology where they can make holograms and they can make it look as real as...
They did it with Tupac like a few years ago, right?
Well, yeah. But they've had this technology forever, for years and years and years. And
that's a whole other thing about the technology that they've had for years, which is way longer than they let us believe. That's something else we can talk about on a different day.
Yeah. Well, and again, if the Vatican has all this hidden stuff, they've maybe had all this technology all along and just slowly putting things out that help them to achieve their means.
Possibly. So, giants.
Yeah.
With what we've read, what we've watched, what we've learned, what do you think?
As far as what? Do I think they existed?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, I think they existed. Freaks me out, and I had this, like, I didn't share this with you. I was waiting for this. But I had this weird, not a dream, but like a thought, I guess. I was thinking to myself, a lot of different things I've read throughout the years, people I've listened to and heard, and lectures and things like that. A lot of people say that the United States was founded to essentially be like the new Rome, right? Like, I'm sure you've heard that term before. We're like the new Rome, and the empire's falling and that kind of thing. Notice how we are the most obese country, collectively, of anybody else. We're pumped full of, fats, sugary foods, genetically modified foods, all this stuff to make us fatter, essentially, right? What if that's being done because whoever they is, knows that the time of the giants is coming, and they're just trying to fatten us up here on this country because they want to have the giants come and just be here so they can live where they are, which, if you're believing the Vatican conspiracy part of it, that them are in control of everything. They're way over there across the ocean, and we're over here, and that's the giants are going to come up, and here we go. Here you go. We got all these big, fat humans ready for you to just feast on. What do you think?
I need a shit ton of firepower.
And I was thinking, too, that was the other thing, that we maybe there's theories out there that there's warring factions in the government. You have the good guys and the bad guys, the white hats, the black hats. What if the fact that we are allowed, now remember, everything closed down for the most part, but they allowed us to still buy our guns and buy bullets. What if that's because maybe the good guys know that something's coming and they want to give us a fighting chance, and that's why they're letting us still buy guns and bullets?
So what you're saying is get lots of guns, get lots of ammo, and learn how to run really, really fast, get in good shape.
Yeah, pretty much. But I had that thought, and I was going to tell you that. I'm like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to just get your reaction to it when I tell you that.
I wouldn't be shocked.
But think about that. I mean, that's just evil and disgusting and vile. But
well, think about it. If you go back to the humans being the slave race to mine gold for these aliens, why can't we become now the cattle?
There are certain people that would say that we already are cattle, and that we've been trained to be cattle all this time. If you look at lines and the way lines are to get into places and stuff like that, you go to an amusement park, corrals and lines. That's essentially what we do with animals, right?
Yeah, but it's also animals aren't waiting to go on fun rides. I mean, maybe that's how they get us used to it. But I think there's a difference between order and then something like that. But it is a thought.
I'm just saying that there are people that refer to us collectively as sheep, because if you think about it, there's a lot of us that are mindless and just believe and do as we're told without question. So what if that is what's happening? And a lot of these things, these disappearances in the mountains, for example, what if it is giants? They're just opening up. They have little parts of the earth they can open up, or they have caves. There's so much undiscovered country out there. Who knows? And they're just taking humans that are getting too close.
Or maybe they're like Sasquatch and they're really good at blending into their environment.
Maybe, yeah, who knows? Who knows?
I just had a thought. What if Bigfoot was when a giant and like an ape or some other animal crossbred? We talked about like how the fallen angels were breeding, creating these things. Or one thought I had was, what if Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, was one of these creatures but happened to survive the floods and is around?
What if?
We just keep getting more questions instead of answers.
Stuff to think about.
Yeah.
It gets crazier and crazier, but is it any crazier than the fact that there was giants at one point?
I totally believe it.
I mean, there are bones. They're out there. They've been discovered. I mean, these giant structures, again, how were they put there? They are thousands of years old. Who put them there? We still don't know. why is it being covered up in so many communities? Why does the church not want people to know history? Why is history constantly being rewritten? I mean, again, we talked about it recently on our Bigfoot show. Gorillas weren't discovered till 1902. I don't know. I just think it's pretty interesting, and history seems to always be changing and evolving. Now, if you look at what kids are taught in school now, it's different than when you and I were in school.
Mm-hmm.
In 50 years, what are people going to be taught as far as history goes? Who knows? Who knows? It doesn't take much. And remember, the winners are the ones that write the history.
Mm-hmm.
The winners of whatever agenda, war, whatever it may be, they're the ones that get to write the history books. They're the ones that have the final say. So you can't believe everything you read or hear or see. You just got to do your own research and come to your own conclusions.
That's right.
And you definitely believe in giants and think that they exist.
Totally.
Do you think that they're still out there?
Oh, yes.
Do you think they're out in the mountains hiding?
And underground, yes.
And underground,
Mm-hmm.
yeah? You think so?
Mm-hmm. And I think there are other things out there, too.
I would agree with that. I would say that, yeah. It just seems like when you take that as a possibility, it could explain so many different things that are currently unexplainable, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody thinks we're nuts now.
I don't care.
I don't care either. So I'm going to put some links in the show notes. I would definitely recommend checking out these documentaries that we kind of talked all over the place about today.
Yeah.
Because they've got a lot of great information in there. There's a lot of just interesting stuff.
We'll leave the, in our show notes, we'll leave the website information for Gen 6 Productions. On there, they have links so you can buy the DVDs for the documentaries that we watched, and they have other stuff that's come out as well.
Yeah, lots of great books and stuff like that too that I'm going to be checking out. But yeah, just definitely check that stuff out and do your own research and come to your own conclusions. But if nothing else, just be ready, be prepared for anything, because no one thought the fucking country could shut down, and look where we are now. Never mind the world.
It was funny because that was part of my tarot reading today about preparation is key. Just the cards that came up, and it's about like doing all this work to be prepared, and just don't, like, once you think you've mastered something, you know, don't get too cocky, because that's when you start to fail. Like, you always have to keep learning and evolving and growing.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, we'd love to hear from you and love to get your thoughts on some of this stuff. You can reach out to us on Twitter,
Homewrecker Pod, or at Homewrecker Pod.
Instagram,
Homewrecker Podcast.
and we have a website,
homewreckerpodcast.com, and you can get shirts. Yay! You can buy t-shirts on there, or you can join our forum, or do both, whatever you want to do.
Either way.
Mm-hmm. And you can find the feed to our podcast as well on our website.
Yeah, we got that up there too. And if you haven't already, we appreciate you going on to wherever you listen to your podcast. You get your podcast, hit the subscribe button.
Mm-hmm.
Costs you nothing. And if you don't mind, leave us a 5-star review too. Helps us to grow the show and helps us to gain visibility. We really, really appreciate everybody's support.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you're listening and you want to watch us and see a little less edited, we typically just, like, if our doorbell rings or something like that, we try to edit those things out, but our videos are pretty much unedited for the most part.
Yeah, you get to hear all the ums and uhs and long,
bloopers,
uncomfortable pauses and us looking at each other kind of funny.
Like,
and,
what the hell are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we try to keep it kind of clean on the podcast side of it, the audio.
But you can find us on YouTube and Brighteon.
Yes. So, until next time, I am the Golden Greek Alexarion. I've been joined as always by my beautiful, gorgeous, lovely, amazing trophy wife, Monique.
And you've been listening to the Homewrecker Podcast.
And one more thing. We hope that wherever you are safe and healthy.
Yes. Take care.